My name is Jack Conrath. I'm a retired school superintendent, and I currently run the superintendent's licensure program here at The Ohio State University. And I'm certainly delighted to be here. I appreciate so much Dr. Lindley Anderman and Dr. Kim Lytle having this particular kind of a forum, because I, as a pre-K through 12 educator for almost 40 years, it has always disturbed me that we haven't used universities and the academic and research component as we make decisions in schools. And I know that when I was in Edgerton that we relied heavily on Bowling Green State University as we did our work to figure out programming for children who were special needs as that group of students first came into public schools in the late 60s and early 70s. And in Marion, Ohio, I remember how in developing our 2-year kindergarten program, we used the resources and the researchers and the expertise of the Ohio State University. And people like Dr. Amos Hatch, one of the premier demographers in the country now at the University of Tennessee, an Ohio State person, did a lot of research with students in our classrooms. And Gay Supinel and her team came up and helped us, along with Columbus City and my friend and colleague Mike here, being the first to introduce reading recovery. But again, very research-based, with people who had a strong sense of the data sitting at the table. And even in Whitehall, as we developed the first early childhood center public preschool in Ohio, which is named after an Ohio State C. Ray Williams Early Childhood Center, and we probably had a dozen researchers from the Ohio State University involved in that particular project. And there are a number of other projects, but again, we always had this university base. So I really wanted to inspire you a little bit that the work that you're doing and thinking about doing is really very, very important. I think that as you think about it, with being involved with public, the 3,700 public school buildings in this state, traditional public, the 300 plus community schools in this state, the 300 plus private and religious schools in this state, that you keep in mind there might be a 4-step process here. And the one is to be sure that you really understand what the schools are like today, and that the issues of security, for example, you really can't take a picture of a child in a school and use that picture without some kind of permission. So things as simple as that are certainly of great concerns to school people. So expect it to be difficult. If you expect it to be difficult to get into the school and to make this work, then you'll be pleasantly surprised if it isn't. But at least you'll be prepared. There are too many schools that are not inviting. Too many of those 4,300 school buildings, they're not inviting for a number of reasons. There's a lot of suspicion, there's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of people who are being overworked, way too much work for the hands that are there. And so, it's going to be difficult. But if you do the second step, the first thing is to make sure you understand the school. If you do the second step, and that is that you qualify the school. Again, there are 4,300 buildings there. You don't have to pick the first or second or third that you want to work with. Find one that's a little easy, the low-hanging fruit. And so make sure you qualify that. Do they understand? Do they understand research? I can assure you this. You're going to have to explain research. I have seen, I sit in school board meetings all the time. I'm in no less, people think I exaggerate this, but I'm in no less than 100 school buildings a year with my work here at Ohio State. And I sit in a lot of board meetings, and I sit in there and I listen to people who are administrators selling a program and holding up a research article that came out of Ed Leadership and saying, this proves that this is the right program to do. Well, that makes any researcher just kind of cringe in their shoes. So do the schools really understand research and the research process? And if they don't, then you're either going to have to help them with that, or you're going to have to move on to a place that's good. Is it a good match between you and the school? Do you get that chemistry? Because the project is going to be difficult, and there'll be times when it'll be frustrating. And then, of course, as both Mike and Peter pointed out, clearly, there has to be a value to the school. And sometimes the value is just doing something for the Ohio State University, so never hesitate to use that. So the third step then is once you find that school, then really work hard to build a relationship. You absolutely have to build a relationship. So many things, and we were asked to talk about the good things and the horror stories, and we could call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, the good thing is that it all works, and I can give you 100 examples of good things. The bad is that it wasn't put together properly. The ugly is that it was put together properly, but all of a sudden things like personalities and politics and other kinds of things cause real serious problems. And I remember specifically an example in Whitehall where we were doing a project, and somebody forgot to say that, by the way, we had to take blood out of these students. Now, this was a little bit before we had IRB and so on, and all of a sudden that came across my desk, and it was, whoa, you know, who approved this? How did this happen? Where did this happen? And the whole thing had to come to a screeching halt. And so you can see that if you don't have all of those things clearly in place, you can have a lot of problems. So have those relationships, understand the strengths and the weaknesses, and have at least one really good, solid advocate, somebody that will really come to your rescue. And then finally, communicate. Schools are very difficult to communicate with. They're really overworked, they're overloaded, and that you may have to communicate on like 3 different layers. So you've got cell phone numbers, you've got text numbers, you've got email numbers, you've got addresses, and do what I do a lot of times, and I just go out there. I just have to go out because I'm not getting a response. And so plan on that. And so finally, I'd like to just conclude with 3 things that I believe and that I think you need to believe now, that I encourage you to believe. And I'll qualify that with, I have about 10 things that I believe strongly. Some of you have heard me give my 10 things. But I believe them strongly, but that doesn't mean they're right. But at least I believe them, and it gives me confidence in moving forward. And then if somebody wants to prove I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to have that discussion. But one thing that I really believe is that there are many decisions that are affecting teaching and learning today that have absolutely no basis in data. And that people are just grabbing something that flies over and they're doing it. And it's causing a lot of frustration with teachers, and it's doing great harm to children. And so we need to be committed to bring the data. And the second thing is that I absolutely believe that the teaching corps in this state and in this country is competent and they're caring. And that if you don't believe that, then you need to make sure that you have discussions and clarify that. Because if you don't believe that, it's very difficult to be effective, because you're going to think you're smarter than they are, you're going to think you're a harder worker than they are, and that's going to come across, and that's going to play against you. And then finally, understand this, in my opinion, and I think my friend David, who just walked in, and hope he'll give us a comment or two as well. But there are not enough hands to do the jobs to educate the children in this country right now. And so people are overworked. So when they do give of their time to do things to help you and to help their kids, then understand that they're really making an additional sacrifice. The work that you do is in bringing data to decision making is absolutely critical. To make a bad decision in teaching and learning, especially in today's world, because resources are so tight, bad decisions can do so much harm, and it could take so long to undo, that I just really am inspired. And I want to thank you all for being here and for being interested in doing this kind of research in our pre-K schools in the state of Ohio. Thank you.